your ego as a leader is going to be the number one barrier to you being good at your job, like hands down. If you look at all the negative things that happen when you've got, ego's bad for the team in general, but especially if it's coming from a leader. You know, what's the real job of a leader? It's to empower the team to get stuff done. So you should be keeping the focus on the team. You should be keeping the focus on the mission, whatever the mission is, whether it's your team or whether it's in the military, whether it's your company or whether it's in the military. You have a goal, you have a mission. If I have a big ego, it's not about the team. It's not about the mission, what it's about me and my ego. So I'm going to lose focus on those things. I'm not going to be good at building relationships because no one likes trying to build a relationship with someone that's an egomaniac. Like you said, we try to avoid them. We don't want to go to them with information. We want to, kind of try to get out of conversations with them as quickly as possible. There's all of these negative things that happen when you have an ego from a leadership perspective. And probably the worst thing is you can't assess yourself. And it doesn't matter how long you've been doing the job, you're going to make mistakes. That's okay, as long as you have the humility to learn from those mistakes. But if you've got a big ego, you don't think you make mistakes. The unfortunate thing for your team is, what are they suffering through the entire time? Yeah. All of your freaking mistakes that you're making and you're going to continue to make because you can't assess yourself.
And what's your mechanism as you identify, as you're doing maybe consulting for a business or how do you, or in your military experience, what's your mechanism for kind of working through? Because that one, more than like a delegation, if you find like, oh, he's a great leader, he's just a little too in the trenches, that's more black and white. Whereas when you start to deal with the subtlety of like somebody's ego, how do you approach kind of addressing one?
I just tell them they have a huge ego.
Really?
No.
Okay. I didn't know. That would be, man, you guys come in hot.
Listen, you're horrible. That would be, that would be the opposite of what we'd want to do. So it goes back to the relationship thing. The only chance that I have, or anybody has, of getting someone that might be suffering from lack of humility, the only chance that we have to be able to get them to maybe start to come to terms with the fact that they need to work on that is through a relationship. If I don't have a relationship with you, it doesn't matter how true the statement is, and it doesn't matter how good my intention is, you're never taking that on board, ever. Over time, we develop a relationship, and really, what are the keys to a relationship? There's trust there. There's some mutual respect there. There's the ability to influence each other starts to come into play. Now I can start to maybe broach the subject of some things that we need to work on. Even when the relationship is rock solid, I'm still not just going to come out and be like, Barry, you have a huge ego, man. Because it's what happens when someone says something like that.
Fangs come out.
The fangs come out. The walls come up. I get defensive. So I would use what we call the indirect approach, which would be to try to flank, to use a military term, to instead of approaching the problem head on, trying to flank them with that information and try to get them maybe to see themselves that they have some issues that they can work through. And anytime someone can come to that determination themselves, it's going to be better, right? It's, I'm married, got 5 kids. My wife is literally the best woman I've ever met in my entire life. She knows for a fact that if she just comes to me and says, this is what we should do, my natural instinct is going to be like, no, we're doing the opposite. And it doesn't matter. It's not because I don't ultimately like respect everything she has to say. That's just my personal tendency is I don't like being told what to do. It's been that way my whole life. I think probably most team guys are like kind of anti-authoritarian.
100%.
So you come and tell us something, even if it's a good thing, we're like, don't tell me what to do. So she knows for a fact, even if it's a really good thing for me, it's going to be a harder conversation than if she just walks me into seeing it myself. So she's a little ninja like that. So
doing Jedi mind
tricks.
Doing
Jedi mind tricks on me. Yeah.
Making you think
I'm on to you, babe.
You came up with a good idea.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
there you
She's
go.
a master at it.
That's a good point.
And as you're working, let's use the company example again. Do you suss that out just on a personal, like whoever's the one actually there kind of consulting for that company? Do you do it through team members and start to build a story based off like maybe you're talking to 10 team members, and if you get the same feedback from 10 team members, you're like, hey, there's something here. What's kind of the mechanism for that?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's definitely a bit of both. You're talking to the team, you're getting a sense for things. The team will let you in on some insights, but someone with a big ego, it doesn't take a long time to figure out that there's some ego at play. And look, we all have ego. And I'm not saying ego is a bad thing in and of itself. There wouldn't be a SEAL teams if there wasn't ego. There wouldn't be a Born Primitive if there wasn't ego, because it's driving you to do something creative, you know, to push your boundaries, to maybe give you some confidence at times when you're not feeling very confident. So it can be a very good thing. We just have to make sure we're using it in the right fashion. But it's not that hard really to get a sense of how someone's leading. Are they leading from a genuine place of wanting to empower others, or is there some ego at play?
Yeah, and I think the good thing about the SEAL teams is there was always a badder dude than you in the room. So like, I feel like ego kind of took care of itself. And then if there was a guy out of line, I would argue we did not take the approach you take with your clients, which is for good reason.
Yeah, a little bit of directness.
In the SEAL teams, it would be very direct.
Yeah.
You'd say, hey, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, it would be dealt with. And I love that because it was so black and white on. Now I think some guys had to come around to that style of being communicated to, but I think by the time you get into a platoon, you've been groomed because training was so savage that, like, you know what I mean? Like,
and
you're just, you know, you're hardened up to receive that kind of information, and just hopefully most guys would take it head on.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, I got to humble myself and kind of like reset and, you know, earn respect back if I've, you know, maybe done something fucked up.
And most guys do. Most guys take that on board. One, because they know the person that's telling them that genuinely cares about it. It goes back to a relationship piece. But look, when I was a new guy, if you were to ask me when I was a new guy, did I have a big ego? I'd have been like, no way, man. I was a new guy. Like, I'm not going to have a lot. There's no way. Did I have ego? Yes. I had an oversized ego for a new guy. But I also had a platoon commander who really trusted me and let me run a lot of things. And I had a platoon chief who was just, you know, he's my best friend on the planet. He's the freaking man to this day. And he actually used the indirect approach on me to show me that I had ego. And it was like the most crushing thing anyone has ever said to me before in my life. So deployment was wrapped up. So we'd been together now for 2 years. We were on Mazar-i-Sharif military base up in northern Afghanistan waiting to redeploy. So we had basically a week and a half of waiting for our bird to pick us up. So we're just working out and hanging out on this base all day long. And there's two parts to Mazar-i-Sharif. There's the American side and then like the German-Dutch side. And of course, like the German-Dutch side, super fun. And like the American side is no fun whatsoever. So we would drive over there in the morning to grab food and hang out for a little bit. And we're on one of these drives across there. It's me, him, and a couple other guys. And I think it was about the time when like the first Marvel movies started coming out. So just randomly, the topic of conversation, when you've been on deployment for 11 months, you run out of things to talk about. So the conversation was like, hey, if you could be a superhero, what superhero would you be? And I said, hey, I'd be Batman. And my platoon chief looks at me and he goes, you wouldn't be Batman. And I was like, yeah, I would be. He goes, no, you wouldn't, because you wouldn't be comfortable wearing that mask because it means nobody would know who you were. And man, dude, my soul, my soul just got freaking crushed. But it was his way kind of indirectly of telling me, you got a big ego, man.
Yeah,
and you got to get that thing in line. You know, he had been there as a platoon chief to put me back in check where I needed to be put back in check, but he knew my next job was going to be a platoon commander. So it was his, you know, parting gift to me of saying like, you've got a couple things you need to work on to be prepared for that role.